page. So you have to accept that, please and thank you. All right, I'm going to spotlight Bill. And not yet. I shouldn't have done that yet.
Does that make me uglier? I'm looking fuzzy.
Okay, folks, super excited and thank you for joining the session. So for those who are new, this is we do a webinar series. We try to do it every month to really, provide knowledge, share information. It's really our goal of this growth mindset within coaching right now, that we want to be really good at providing information that we can all digest, see if we can use, see what's useful for us, and share from the experts, because we have tons of experts in our sport and people that work with our sport that are super excited to give back. And Bill Trayling is one of those. So Bill Trayling, for those who don't know Bill, wears many, many hats, has been in the coaching field for, I don't even know how many years, but Bill's actually one of my first bosses 20 some odd years ago. So add maybe another 20 years. I could say that because Bill's just actually now retired as a teacher as of 5 days ago. So congratulations, Bill. But Bill's also done a ton of work with CKO and CKO Sprint and CKC on coach education. And he's done a ton of work in the field of how to, work with athletes, work with coaches on the humanistic approach to it. So what does that look like in terms of how do we support the whole athlete? And that's really what today's session is about. But it's also where we want to go within our sport, and where we're trying to really move forward with CKO is supporting the person first, supporting the athlete. We know how to do that from a technical side, and supporting the performance, but really looking at those three kind of pillars of person, athlete, performance, and how do we do that to be, successful on and off the water. So to create this environment where success isn't just measured by who's on the podium, what medals you get. It's, the way I speak about it now is for the athletes that are transitioning out of sport and hopefully, or out of high performance sport and hopefully want to come back as coaches or volunteers, what do they feel their experience was? Right. So for the athletes on the call, we want you to have a really positive experience as you go through your paddling side, and then hopefully you stay in the sport. And for the coaches on the call, I mean, hopefully it was a positive experience because you're still in and coaching, and how do you transition that to the next generation of athletes? But that's really where sport's going. And it's certainly where we're going with in Ontario to really understand that just technical expertise is absolutely needed, but we need to go further and we need to be better. And that's where Bill and a few other experts are going to be leading the way with us. So super excited to have Bill on. I highly suggest that you ask questions because it's going to spark the conversation with Bill and everyone on the call here. And also, you will see Bill at events. He does do a number of stuff with Ontario, and he does love being part of the sport. So don't be afraid to pick his brain like off the session, because he will always be there to answer questions and help provide support. So thank you so much, Bill, for joining us, and thank you extremely for kind of being the leader in this area that is so important for sport.
Thanks, Ryan. And Ryan's right. I mean, I didn't know how to address or how to come at, this tonight. Bouncing around and breakout rooms and discussions is one way to do it. The other one is just to run through some things, a little bit of history, a little bit of, what whole athlete coaching is, to start you thinking about it. It's hard to have a discussion about something, but I will give you a chance to have input, and unless you understand the basis. So certainly, if hopefully I get through, the deck that I put together, I certainly invite any of you, and the last slide I'll say this, to reach out with questions, queries, comments, things, just little things, because the more we work together, the more we share and have discussions and conversations, the better we get. So here we go. I'm going to share. Oh, I've got an update available. Not now. Here we go. No, not me. All right. Raise your hand if you can see my first page. Good?
Yeah, we're good, Bill.
All right. So coaching the whole athlete in sport. I loved what Ryan said earlier about person-athlete performance. There's a number of ways of saying this. We need to look at more than just the performance on the water. Has anybody ever felt like they were a bit of a commodity in any area of life? You know, it might be in paddling. It might have been in another sport, in hockey. It might be so that, you know what I mean by commodity is that people that are behind you are mostly concerned about the output, right? People have jobs, right? And sometimes your boss and the people that employ you, you know, it feels like they only care about what you're doing for them. And sadly, the same thing happens in sport. And what we realized, and I did a ton of research on this while I had COVID last week, 3 days clear now. You know, it's been going on for a long time. I mean, in many countries. So with further ado, we'll take a look at a quote. This is a bit of a disclaimer. Even though there's a considerable amount of literature on the coaching process, there is no single framework or empirical model of effective and successful coaching that's achieved consensus. What does that mean? Someone tell me what that means.
There's no right way and wrong way.
Good, good. I mean, I can think of a couple of, I can think of a range of ways. Anybody know who Thomas Budai Sr. is? Daddy-o. He said to me years ago, Neil, there are 10,000 ways to make a champion. I never forgot that. So a lot of coaches, you know, they develop their methods and they protect them like some sort of golden orb, right? And they get really selfish. You know, one of the things that is behind my philosophy of coaching is sharing, especially sharing things that I don't know, because that's how you learn. And one of my favorite quotes that isn't written here is, we don't know what we don't know. And sadly, it often comes up and hits us in the face. And that's when we know that we don't know. But if you can share and ask questions before that and have conversations, you might avoid some of the trauma. So now Ryan introduced me. This is who I am. The teacher one, yeah, I'm officially retired, and that's great. You know, one of the things I am is a coach. And, you know, some of you on this call right now have been coached by me. Some of you on the water, some of you not on the water. I do a lot of coaching and, you know, of people and helping them just with decision-making, with dilemmas, with ideas. I'm one of those people that likes to be a maven. I like to find an opportunity and a person and put them together, and maybe things work out. So again, if any of you ever have questions, if any of you, I mean, I'm a glorified guidance counselor, folks, you know, so I consider myself a coach, particularly of young people. I love working with young people. I'm also all those other things. The last one's important because a human being, biggest characteristic of a human being is they make mistakes. And I certainly do. I try to make them like baseball. Once, twice, try not to make the third time. Anybody recognize this picture?
Sorry, Bill, to interrupt. I think Emma had her hand raised for a little bit.
I don't see everybody, so I won't see Emma. Oh, there you are, Emma. Thank you. What's up?
Oh no, you just said to raise your hand if you could see the screen.
Wow, there we are. Thank you, Emma. It's wonderful to have you here. How are you doing where you are?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. I love seeing that you've traveled and you're spreading the goodwill and everything you've learned. So Emma, do you remember this picture? Put you on the spot.
Kind of.
There you go. We saw this picture in 2 courses, our Canoe Kids course and our Comp Intro course. I'm surprised people didn't jump in that have just finished the course. Central to your job is the participant. Their needs are central. Again, has anybody here ever felt that your needs were not central when you were being coached? You don't have to answer that, but if you want to voice up, you can. Some of the things we'll talk about tonight, it may have been a traumatic experience for you. So certainly we don't have to voice up. But hopefully someone out there is saying, yep, I felt like a bit of a commodity, right? We're going to look at these things tonight. I'll skip over this. You guys can look at this later. I do want to, we're going to look at the whole person approach to coaching. We're just going to scratch it a bit. We're going to think about challenging our coaching philosophies. I know many of you have just written one. They change all the time. The best coaching philosophy I've ever heard is that of Mr. Ryan Blair, only because it's like 5 words. And I know he's worked on it a long time. So again, that ability to break it down into 1 sentence, hopefully you can get there. Right now, I don't want you to be good at it. I want you to be choosing all sorts of different ideas until something really feels good in your heart. We're going to look at a bit of history. Again, I think you need to understand where things come from and a bit of the research history when we start talking about things. And I've got 4 key pillars. Again, going back to that slide, they are not gospel. They are things that I think are really important when we want to create a culture of athlete agency, which is, anybody know what athlete agency is? You're your own agent. You own what you're doing. You own your work. You own your mistakes. You are responsible for them. And we have responsibility. And the big one is the intrinsic motivation. We are not successful in anything unless we're intrinsically motivated, right? So there's some guiding questions. And if anybody has any questions, they can fire them in the chat, questions that come along. Someone remind me, I don't have the chat up necessarily here, but Ryan can help me with that. So we want to look at how we continue to develop our coaching philosophy. We want to look at what practices can I adopt, what things can I do after tonight to start, developing my ability to coach the whole athlete, to work with strengths, to work with engagement. And how do we create a relationship with athletes so that you can contribute not only to their success on the water, but the key is off the water. Again, the people part of the person-athlete performance. So here we go. Whatever characteristics a coach possesses, failure is almost guaranteed if a coach does not feel a need to improve. I mentioned this quote in the course in the half hour before. If you don't feel you need to improve, you will fail as a coach. Because if you're not learning, you're not burning. Okay, so little Jamboard activity. 5 minutes to complete this little activity. Answer the question as coaches. And if you're an athlete in here, if you've never coached, you know what a coach does. So what do you think? So guess what most coaches think the athletic skills and abilities they value the most, right? What athletic skills and abilities do we value most? Does anybody not know how to use Jamboard? Click the link.
We can't click the link.
Oh, really? Did I not share? It said anything with anyone with the link.
Bill, just copy the link and put it in the chat if you can.
Yeah. I built this ages ago. Okay.
It just means they can't click the link from your presentation. That's why.
Ah, because I haven't. Oh man. There's always something.
So if you just go to chat
Where's
on the
my
bottom
chat?
bar,
It's
just go
on
to
the
bottom
top
bar
for
of your
me.
screen.
There it is. It's on the top for me. Crazy computer. Here we go. Does it work now?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So go to the Jamboard, get a little post-it note, which is the middle one. I'm demonstrating. I just put speed up there. I took somebody's. Ooh, they're writing. Try it with Post-its. It'll be easier. Flexibility, good. I'm having to move these around because I have someone writing. Determination, strength, endurance, power. Try to move your Post-it so I don't have to. Understanding, good. Coachability, eagerness. So many of you that have done a course, you know about, we've talked about athletic abilities, right? We've talked about athletic skills. What do you think that your coaches thought were the most important things that you had, the most important, most valuable assets that you had? Good. Cool. Good. Okay. 5 more seconds. Some of you like drawing on that. So take a look at those things, right? Flexibility, speed, eagerness, endurance, understanding. You know, we have a lot of physical skills and some couple of mental skills. I'm going to show you some in a second. Okay. Back to this. All right. What do the experts say? So from the research, these are the skills and abilities that coaches value. Technical skills, number 1. Most coaches go right to the technical skills. Tactical skills. So these are strategies, right? Some of you have some tactics on your Post-its. Physical skills. Again, fundamental movement skills, all the fitness components, speed, stamina, strength, endurance, and all those. Psychological skills, down the list, but they still have it. So these are cognitive and mental skills. We talked about, you know, ability to focus. We talked about toughness, right? And I could talk to you later about toughness and what it is and what it isn't. Also, lastly, social and emotional skills. Does anybody want to jump in and tell me a story about how you knew this story that wasn't you, about a coach that didn't really seem to care if you had social or emotional skills? Again, protecting all of us out there. It's okay. So these are self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, relationship skills. Raise your hand if you think those are important for an athlete to have. You can take your hand off once you raise it. Now raise your hand again if you think these are undervalued by coaches. That's a little more general question. Okay. So according to Cote and Gilbert, you hear a lot of Cote tonight. He's a fantastic man, Jean Cote. He's a sports psychologist that I've worked with in a number of contexts. This is pretty well obvious. Everybody agree? Most coaches feel confident in addressing the technical, tactical, and physical aspects of the athlete, right? Say yes, through your voice.
Yeah.
I'm lonely here. That was one good yeah, for sure. To a lesser degree, coaches are able to tackle the mental aspects. I mean, maybe someone here, does anybody here want to admit that they really don't know a lot about mental training, psychological training, what it is, how to work with it? A lot of people think it's just sitting in a room focusing or being tough, right? One of the key mental training characteristics of an athlete is, can they keep a training book? You know, can coaches keep a training book? right? So leading sports psychologists know that you will be about 7% faster if you keep a training manual. But a lot of us don't know that. And to even a lesser degree, coaches are prepared to teach and manage and coach the social and emotional aspects of the athlete. And this is something that is keeping us back if we have coaches in our system that don't know this. Now, there's nothing wrong with not knowing this, right? Unless they know they don't know it and they maintain their ignorance. They put their fingers in their ears, they focus on what they're strong at, they go back to this one and they say, I'm good. I write a program, I can coach technique, and I can make you fast, right? And I can give you big muscles, right? I might be mental, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to admit mistakes. That's a death knell for a coach. So what does coaching a whole athlete look like? It looks like a coach that focuses on the whole person, right? Encouraging athletes to partner in the coaching process. That's the key thing in everything I read. So it's consultative coaching. It's partnering with you as an athlete, right? Or your coach partners with you in decision making, right? They consult with you, they include you, there's trust between you and the coach. There's autonomy, right? In the consultative athlete coach relationship. And what does that do? And everybody nod your head, even if you're not on the screen. It makes you feel better about decision making, right? On and off the water. It makes you feel better as a person. It is really important because research says coaching models where athletes actively contribute to your program and take ownership of their training, research says those people not only will be happier, healthier, longer term athletes, but they'll be faster, right? This does not mean you're going to write the training program, but this means that you're consulted. One area in a book I'm reading called Do Hard Things by Steve Magnus, he talks about a coach that will set the parameters for the workout, but then let the athletes decide when to stop and let the athletes decide how hard to go. He's a phenomenal running coach. Can you imagine your coach just saying go? It doesn't matter. There's no 70, 80%. Just go the speed you want to go. Because you can feel what you need. And also when you're done, just go away. I remember that happening in one training camp, in the National Team training camp. The coach but it wasn't done well. It was abusive, where the coach would say, you're done, go in. And there was almost this walk of shame or paddle of shame, up the river, because he'd only send you in when you started going slow. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about athletes taking the lead in deciding when they're done. Here's a key. If you're going to coach someone, you've got to understand them. Raise your hand if you've ever been misunderstood by coaches that were pretty good coaches. Yeah, for sure. This is Arthur Lydiard. He was a phenomenal athletics coach. He coached many, many, many Olympians for New Zealand back in the day. He also has another funny quote. If a coach can't tell you why you're doing a particular workout, you need to get yourself another coach. Again, holistic coaches that coach the whole athlete, coaches that are not afraid to be at the same level as the athlete, right? We know that the coach probably knows more, but opening that door and letting the athletes know why they're doing something, it really helps the athletes. Hands up if you agree. Anybody want to tell a story? And again, no names are mentioned in stories, folks, and they're hypothetical. I used to have a Hungarian coach at Mississauga back in the 80s through my junior world year. He would never tell us what the workout was. He would just say, okay, pick up the speed, go. And we'd be heading out into Lake Ontario. How far are we going today, Laszlo? And he would tell us to basically be quiet in a not so nice way. How fast should I go? Good speed, faster, faster, faster. That's about it. We'd be doing 27 times a minute heading for Buffalo. And we'd be looking back like, what's going on? Our heads were full of extra smoke because we didn't know what we were going to be doing. Now, this is legendary amongst Eastern Bloc coaches, right? Anybody have an experience? Okay. I'll wait 3 seconds when I ask a question. So again, like I said, this is not new stuff. The principles inherent in coaching the whole athlete, in partnering, in consultative coaching, have been around for a long time. Terms like athlete empowerment coaching, humanistic coaching, athlete-centered coaching, you've probably heard that a lot. Consensus coaching, servant leadership, self-determination coaching have been used interchangeably over time. No matter what the term or the nuanced differences between them, they all assume a partnership. That is inherent, the partnership. Athletes learn to take tremendous ownership of the sport. They play a significant role in their training and their racing. I'm gonna put a lot into my throat. Athlete-centered coaching. So I did mention athlete-centered. This term, there's a bit of history here, but the key thing that I want you to know is a lot of times you'll hear a coach say, my program is athlete-centered. I had one coach I worked for that drove home that it's athlete-centered, coach-driven. You'll hear that too. I think that phrase gave the coach the ability to say, it's centered on me, right? I know what's good for you. And this can happen a lot, right? Where people they grab onto the ego, they're a coach, maybe they're a little concerned about their success, which, our success as coaches is relying on your success. And it's a funny paradox that sometimes we treat you in a way that does not allow for success, as we're concerned about sharing too much or opening up or going in on the level, on the same level. So be aware when people say they have an athlete-centered program. And I encourage you to go back to your club, go back to your coaches and share a little bit of what you learned tonight. Even at the Olympic level, right? We know the Olympic oath, doesn't really talk about, if anyone has memorized it, that's great. But the Olympic oath talks about the pursuit of excellence, talks about personal and social characteristics through sport, right? And that's the focus. So it's a little bit like an architect and a client. If you're participating in this whole athlete or consultative coaching process, as a coach or an athlete, you feel it, right? Athletes feel significant ownership over important facets of their training. So it's the same as if there's an architect and a client, right? The client determines style of building, features, budget, all that. The architect, who's the expert, then works out the best way to meet the client's requests, but they're the client's requests. Have you ever had a coach that did not really understand your goals, but wrote a program for you anyway? That is like giving you a cake recipe without understanding that you hate chocolate cake. So the athlete or the client determines the level of participation. Agree or disagree? As an athlete on the water, many of your athletes, do you determine your level of participation? Yeah, you do. I don't see any hands. You determine that based on what? It's in the last bolded statement. What's the M word?
Motivation.
Yeah. Highly motivated individual just spoke up. So based on your influence in the training program, does anybody agree with that? If you had a say does anybody, maybe you have a story where you have a say, where there is some equity, where you are coached as a whole person, where people understand who you are and what your goals are and what your quirks are and what your self-awareness is. And because of your relationship, you're more motivated to go out there and work hard. Yes? Okay, I'm going to wow you with a bit of Freudian science. 100 years ago, not many of you weren't around, all leading psychologists they all advocated that our behavior was based on uncontrollable things. So Freud, Hull, Skinner, they all believed that there's stimuluses that drive our behavior. This was the premise for coaching, the development of coaching. There wasn't a lot of coaching 100 years ago, but if you watch movies like Chariots of Fire, coaches, actually that coach was a whole athlete coach, but coaches generally didn't think that you were responsible for what you did, which is kind of a funny thing. I don't know why you'd be a coach. There's something called free will that came along. The idea of free will came along by the middle of the 20th century. And we know now that that called motivation is what drives your behavior. Cognitive psychology came along and it started working with athletes and athlete motivation. And we know now, as I said, that motivation is controlled by the athlete. Anybody ever here been unmotivated to do something? Sure, all of us. Why were we unmotivated? Even if it was important, like doing an essay, right? Like doing a practice, your least favorite practice. What do you think was missing that led to your lack of motivation?
Enjoyment.
Very good. And we go back to our coaching course, right? And we talk about enjoyment all the time. Ryan talked about enjoyment. It's got to be enjoyable. Remember I said to some of you that took my course, I like that word enjoyment because it includes hard work, right? It's not just trivial fun. Enjoyment. That means that, it's that feeling after the workout when you've done the hardest workouts and you've done something for your body and mind and spirit, and you've reached one click forward, right? So cognitive psych got deep into coach effectiveness and realized that the most significant stimulus affecting your participation is an intrinsic stimulus. So as a coach, if I support you and I give you autonomy, we all know what that means. So I kind of let you go and play. And that's why I believe heavily in self-discovery paddles, right? Just go out on your own and figure something out. Self-discovery runs. I just talked to an athlete that I'm working with this week, and he's away right now. And I said, go take your wallet, throw it in your pocket, put on a pair of running shoes and your shorts, and go for a jog, run, walk. Just go out and explore, right? I used to do that when I arrived in a new city, right? I call it discovery run. So that kind of autonomy where the coach says, go, trusting that you'll do the right thing, not following you, screaming at you to keep running, right? Because that doesn't make running fun, and running's not fun unless you're running towards something that's quite motivating. But most runs beginning and end at the same place, so I don't understand that. Okay, so along came the power to the athlete situation. Okay, and this gentleman, Paul Potrak, he's a great researcher. He argued and developed a theory that power has always been central to the coaching process. Many of you have experienced coaches that like to hold all the power. Okay, you don't put your hand up, but I know some of you have had coaches that like to hold the power. Power is the basis of social interaction, and thereby, since social interaction lies at the heart of the coaching process, it's like an axiom of something with math. That's why the coaching process is about power. It just is. So what do we do with the power? Traditional coaching models, the prescriptive, the command, autocratic, fear-based, and I've experienced that, they had the power with the coach, right? But the coach, and agree or disagree here, didn't you always have the power, even if you had a dogmatic, fear-based coach, autocratic coach? What did you have the power to do?
I guess not show up to the next practice if you really didn't want to.
CBT. Has anybody heard those words? Come back tomorrow. It's our premise for coaching. Get the kid, I don't care what they learn, as long as they're excited to come back tomorrow, they will learn something, and then they'll learn something else, and scaffold, scaffold, scaffold. So yeah, has anybody ever here quit a workout? Just stopped? Not so much because of injury, maybe, but motivation, right? Where you just opted out or you didn't go to practice the next day. There's nothing wrong with that. That's you exercising power, which is normal, especially in situations where you felt you didn't have power, right? And you don't just do this at the canoe club. Many of you do this at home too, and in other parts of your life. Everything we're talking about with whole athlete coaching has to do with you holistically in your life on this planet. So one of the things I used to do to take power, and it was actually a good thing, I would just quit the workout, right? And I was maligned by the athletes I worked with, by the coach occasionally that was out there, called a quitter. And the benefit was that when I got to the race course, I was not overtrained. But I had to decide to do that. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I felt terrible. But somehow I was able to block it when I got to the race. And I know now that if I'd stayed out there and finished the workout because I was supposed to, like everyone else, well, who all has the same capacity in a large training group? Finishing a workout, everybody finishes the workout. That workout's probably ideal for 2 or 3 people in that group, right? Now, general training, there's nothing wrong with that. But by creating a situation where you can opt out before you have to do it out of shame is a lot better. So what we've seen over the past 2 generations is a real shift from coach-dominated power to power sharing consultation. So this is just a little on the history. There's a woman who writes great books if you're a coach, right? Her name's Lynn Kidman. Sorry, my nose is going. Athlete-centered coaching, developing decision makers, because we're all decision makers when we're doing our sports. She really changed the game, and things went way, way, way more into whole athlete coaching. This is my hero right here, right? This is Jean Coté. He said at a conference I was at, sport can be a positive, empowering space for athletes to develop confidence. Raise your hand if you agree. Or say yay. Agency. We know what that is now. Self-worth, all while improving your athletic performance. So again, focusing on the whole athlete doesn't mean you're just going to have fun and be slow. It actually means you're going to enjoy and be faster or stronger or go higher. Those are Olympic things. Or the coach can be what I used to call some teachers, a tool of torture, where you end up feeling detached, your anxiety goes up, and the coach is actually harmful to the development of the healthy sense of self. So again, the coach driving this in a very autocratic way can make these athletes feel like this without even knowing it. Especially, and I find that's a paradox as well. Many coaches that aren't willing to kind of strip down and be human and say they make mistakes are probably turning athletes off and don't even know it, right? So I do blame the coach because coaches know this stuff. If I can do this research, they can. But they often have some success, have some successful athletes focus on that. So a little bit about Coté and his buddy Gilbert. So Wade Gilbert is a guy from California. They did research on what's an effective coach, right? And they came up with a definition. And I won't go too much into this, but if you're interested in this, reach out to me. They came up with 3 areas. And what they basically said is, again, like the survey at the beginning, we focus on the technical side, we focus on the professionalism, we focus on the interpersonal stuff, but that competence, confidence, connection, and character, we don't really focus enough on that. We don't focus on the whole athlete. We don't focus on the humanistic side as much as we should, right? I think every coach tries to, but not all of them do their work, their research. So these are the areas they came up with. Don't memorize that. What they did come up with was a framework, and they came up with something called the 4 C's and the 3 P's. So they know that athletes go faster, are happier when competence increases, confidence increases, connection increases, and character increases. So these 4 C's will increase, and the increase of the 4 C's will cause the 3 P's to increase, which are participation. Here's your CBT. They come back tomorrow, right? Higher levels of performance and personal development. It looks like 7 Ryan Blair said, person, athlete, performance, right? So the enhancement of these personal assets, as Cote said, these don't happen automatically or by accident. Growth of an athlete, and I mean holistic growth, depends on activities, relationships, and settings in which the sport takes place, right? So there's a picture of it. So this is what happens to you as an athlete, as a student, as a person at home, as everything in life pretty well, but let's focus on sport. So you have engagement and activities, you have quality relationships. That's why you gotta have friends. That's why a lot of you go. Appropriate settings, and that one is red because the coach decides the setting. I don't just mean at Mississauga or at Burloak. What I mean is that's the program. They set the program. They tune the program in. They dial in different things, and not just technical, but all the things that interact the quality relationships and personal engagement activities. These are all the things that change. These are the micro things that happen immediately when you're down at the club. These things, if they're, the coach cooks up the soup right and does a lot of good things, allows lots of personal engagement activities, it has, again, lots of opportunity for quality relationships, sets the table right in terms of the program, in terms of things I'll talk about later that are the pillars. All those 4 C's will now get better. And when all those 4 C's get better, the 3 P's get better. And ultimately the performance, the middle one, you cross the line in first place. So again, we're not talking about just having fun and not getting it done. And these things change over time if there's intentional work done by the coach. Quick one about a great study I read. Won't go on too much about it, but again, Martin Erikstad in Norway, I believe, he found that during COVID-19, he went around and looked at clubs and sports that were using the whole athlete approach, letting, sharing the building of the program, having athletes give feedback and feed forward. And he found that these programs, and we all know what it was like trying to train during COVID, right? So a lot of programs, a lot of athletes have left. The person that lives in my house, my girlfriend's 18-year-old, left swimming. A lot of athletes have left and just been done, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's just transition. But sport is really, sport is hurting, maybe even at the clubs. You agree? It's taken a while for people to come back. And one of the things where they did not lose people were in areas where they used holistic coaching. So when the dynamic elements of the program interacted with each other, results showed big improvements in all the personal assets. And someone tell me what happens when your personal assets improve. What else improves?
Your motivation improves?
It does. It's a cycle. So 4 P's lead to 3. Sorry, 4 C's lead to 3. I just gave it away.
P's?
3 P's. There you go. 3 P's on your plate. Anybody name one of them? Go.
Personal development.
Participation.
Here we go. There it is. And performance. I like that you left that one out because those other ones, I think, are, performance is why we're here. Let's be real. That's why we spent all that money on that fancy skinny boat. But we also did it because we want to stay in the sport, and you don't pull one of those out without the other ones improving. Participation, personal development, and performance. So maybe we've learned a little reset in sports. So if any of you are going to go out and start a sport program, start with holistic coaching. It's not hard, and it has a lot better outcomes, right? We do not need that talent needs trauma type of coaching and sport anymore. And I think COVID showed us that. Many of us, we're humans first. We found that in the job industry, right? There's never been more people retiring out of work than after COVID. Do you know why? What do people realize?
How much they like something else?
Yeah, like life, freedom, enjoyment, right? And it's funny because I'll talk again about the 18-year-old in the house. You know, he was dogmatically swimming, swim, and then he couldn't swim. And all of a sudden he found the mountain bike, and he found skateboarding, and he found, relationships, right? At school. And it was like, I feel bad, but I don't want to go back and swim. I don't want to look at the black line. There's nothing wrong with that. There's actually a lot right with that, because now he works hard, does all the right things, is succeeding in life and doing things they enjoy. Now, if the program had been more holistic, I mean, certainly a facility was an issue, but it had been more holistic and didn't try to keep being the same as it was when there was trauma hitting the athletes and all of us, then maybe they would have kept things together a little longer, right? So when something feels wrong, as with these lemmings in the cartoon, what do we need to do? What is one of those lemmings that's not quite off the cliff need to say?
Something needs to change.
Something needs to change. Perfect. Okay. I have a little over 10 minutes to go through so I've developed 4 pillars, right? No surprise, there's four people in the boat, my favorite boat to paddle, K4. 4 pillars of whole athlete coaching. These are things that are not new, but they are things that I encourage you to build into your coaching or into your life in some way. Even if you're not coaching, even if you're not participating in high performance athletics. Remember, we're talking about the whole athlete. We're talking about the whole person. We're talking about things about you that are going to affect every aspect of your life. First one, self-awareness. How many of you consider yourself very self-aware? What would be a characteristic? I'm going to ask Lily. How do you know you're self-aware? What do you know about yourself?
Well, I feel like I am really good at reading my own emotions. And when I have heightened emotions, I'm able to process how I'm feeling and understand it. And I also feel like I kind of realized I was self-aware when I was able to also see that in other people. And then I kind of saw that I was able to see it in myself. So it reflected to be able to kind of read others.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any training?
Pardon?
Have you ever been trained on self-awareness?
No, I haven't, but I learned it in school, kind of around the topic, but.
Yeah. Cool. You know that a lack of self-awareness is going to lead, and this was me when I was an athlete. I really didn't have a lot of self-awareness, right? ADHD boy. Lack of self-awareness led me to struggle to regulate my thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So when the thought like, oh, I suck comes into my head, I wasn't able to step aside and say to little Billy, who I talk to now, and saying, little Billy, just calm down, right? And actually, I wouldn't say calm down. I would teach myself how to calm down. Little Billy, breathe, right? Took me a long time to do that. As explained by a guy named Jackson and another guy I'm not even going to pronounce, but he's a brilliant man who wrote a book called Flow. Without self-awareness, athletes miss important cues that can lead to positive change in performance. So if anybody is out there knowing that self-awareness is a weakness, and it's something all of us need to work on, get to it, okay? go to the internet, figure out how to use, things like the signal lights with your athletes. Do this with kids. You're working with kids. Their parents will love you. If I send my kid to the swimming pool or the canoe club, if they come back really, really self-aware, that's a skill that they're going to have all their life, right? If we're going to sell the kayak at some point, they're going to move on, probably. Hopefully they stay involved. But the way they'll stay involved is if they're happier, and if they're more self-aware, they'll understand why they're happy at the canoe club. But the point is, folks at clubs that are coaches, develop this. Reach out to me and talk to me about it. You should have a program. One of your pillars should be self-awareness. I'll skip that slide, but that's just something called query theory, which was kind of fun because this coach said, I love coaches that say, my job as a coach is to make myself redundant, to work myself out of a job so that you as an athlete, you as a person, you as a human being can basically run your own show, right? And the way we do that is by asking questions, not telling, right? And I should be doing this tonight. I should be asking and asking and asking. And I will do that with you, right? Some of you know that. I work with some of you, right? I love questions, right? I don't have the answers. You have the answers. All of you have every answer you've ever needed right inside you. What you need are the right questions. So that's what query theory is. And the best, highest level query theory occurs when we move from a coach having to ask us questions. Is anybody good at this? Anybody good at just asking yourself questions as you go through something? I'll bet some of you are. Pillar 2 is effective communication. I won't go on too much about this. We talked about this in the course earlier tonight. We can all get better at communicating, right? The key thing is most of us are good at the talking part, right? But some of us aren't, especially if we don't have self-awareness. We exchange thoughts, ideas, feelings, right? Verbally and non-verbally. What percent of communication is non-verbal? Most of it.
Body language, stuff like that.
Well, there's tone of voice, body language, and then there's the words. And take a look. There's a phenomenon in triad, but it's over 70%, right? The words are like less than 30%. You communicate when you're on the water. Your coach communicates. Work on communication skills. Practice communication just like you practice self-awareness skills. The coaches also have to practice their communication skills. That quote says it all. Nothing more important in coaching than communication. Little fun thing called feed front. So we understand that the key to developing athlete input is feedback, right? But feedback is reactive. I have to do something as a coach to get you to say something. So I'll ask you a question, query theory, and you give me an answer. What if you as a coach created a situation in your groups where there was unprompted information from athletes, where athletes felt comfortable feeding you frontwards? So without being asked, how do you feel today? What's going on in your head? You feel comfortable enough to say to the coach, here's how I'm feeling today. It's a lot easier as a coach if I get athletes to feed front than if I require them to give feedback based on questions. So that's a little fun term that I thought you might learn, right? And I will share this deck with all of you, or Ryan's you can go on and look at the recording. I don't think I'm gonna watch myself. So again, back to Kidman. Athletes in a coach-athlete partnership that is enhanced by feed front perform better, but they also more confident in everyday life. There you go. Pillar 3, emotional intelligence. Who knows what this is? Again, really good. Who has no idea what it is?
Yeah, Lily raised her hand.
Yeah, I did. I saw that, Lily and Justin. Okay, so someone that has no idea. I like you because you're saying, I need the bucket filled. I need to know what this is, right? Years and years ago, we measured intelligence, right? What was the test called? Some places in the dark world, they still measure this. It was called IQ, intelligence quotient. It means nothing. What really means something is your emotional intelligence, your EI, right? So what's super important is for you to understand what emotional intelligence is, right? And that Goleman book at the bottom, I'll show you at the next page. I read that book years ago when I was starting to coach, but I didn't read it because I was a coach. And I probably didn't apply enough things to my coaching, but it was a fantastic book. So again, if you have a high degree of emotional intelligence, and Lily touched on some of this before, you can recognize your own emotional state. You can also accurately sense emotions in others, which is you can see the benefit of coaching there. You can also switch into your best emotional state to manage a specific situation. And that's what this quote said earlier from Bo Hansen, is that they marvel at the athletes that can switch themselves on, right, to create that performance. Have you ever been marveled by someone that could just switch themselves on? They're not doing it out of chance. They're doing it because they have a high degree of emotional intelligence. And you're not born with a high degree of emotional intelligence. You've obviously gone through a life path that had you learn emotional intelligence. So fundamental to understanding intelligence, right? You got to know that each of us already has a level of the skill. All of us do, but all of us can get better. And coaches need not only to improve their own, but they also need to create programs, intentional programs during practice time. You're like, well, how do we do this? We're always on the water. Don't always be on the water, or use things where you're on the water to develop emotional intelligence. We can talk later about that, right? So these are the people that we see as mentally tough, right? The ones that can turn on and go. It's emotional intelligence. And then this is a little more on Goleman's quadrants, but you can see some things here that are all of these things, especially the ones up in self-awareness, are all things that we want our athletes to have as athletes and as people. So Kierkegaard said, if one's truly leading a person to a specific place, and we want to do that as coaches, you have to first and foremost take care, find out where they are.
Leave. Close the door, please.
So you've got to start where the
Yes.
athletes are, right?
Thank
If you were teaching swimming, would you take them all to the deep end and put them in the water? Someone answer.
Not a chance.
No. What would you do?
Just get them in the shallow end first, somewhere where they can
Sure.
touch and they feel comfortable.
Comfortable, and then you check off, you can do the shallow end. So then you move a little deeper, have them there, try some things, check off. Again, it's called scaffolded teaching. I hope you're doing this in your Canoe Kids programs. We don't just put them all in the same place, right? We don't just give them all the same bench press weight to lift, right? Again, we need to start where people are, right? And that's where I start with athletes and coaches that I work with, where they are, because where they are is a really comfortable place, as you said earlier. And that's when they're more confident in growing and admitting gaps. Last pillar is something that I highly believe in: individual coaching conversations, right? There's tons of evidence. Has anybody got a good situation with anybody in your life where you have conversations? Good, good. Are these conversations scheduled ahead of time and systematized, which means that that's just a fancy word for scheduling? Are they scheduled like weekly, monthly? Because that's the difference, right? So the ICC is something that must be kind of scheduled, and you plan for it, and you don't need to study for it. You just go into the conversation. But these types of conversations make the coach a better coach and the athlete a better athlete. How many agree that when you have a relationship with a coach where you can talk to the coach, any type of coach, teacher, anyone, when you can have that conversation ongoing, it's a lot better relationship and you're a lot more motivated. Absolutely. So in Denmark, anybody know that person up on the right? I meant Norway. I said Denmark. I'm rushing. Slow down, Bill. So in Norway, that's Larson who beat Adam in 2012. So Norway has a lot of success in sport. They also have cool pants on their curlers, right? There's a common understanding among coaches that it's so important to include and involve athletes, not only in analyzing, planning, and evaluating and being part of their training planning, but they also take regular part in ICCs, right? It's in the whole sports system. So when this is achieved, it improves the relationship. Does anybody want to tell a quick story about a person that, you don't have to name them, where you have a great conversation on a regular basis and it's planned ahead of time? Or what's it done for you? You don't have to say who, you can just, and what's the outcome of the ICC been?
Bill, it's Ryan. Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
When I was in the club environment, Monday morning, all the athletes and myself and the coaches, we would meet together in the boardroom or whatever we want to call it then, and we would just have conversation. A conversation of, what happened for them last week, what happened on the weekend, how are they doing, and what we're going to the week coming up. And it was super important to it. And this was an individual. We did it as a group because we were comfortable together, but super important to understand where they're at and where they're going in those conversations, with whether it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so on Monday morning. We knew where we wanted to go the following week, and we knew what adjustments we needed to make to the plan. But those conversations were super, super important because it was an opportunity. We all sat around, round table kind of thing, and just had a conversation of where we're going to go. What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? And it grew into this. What are they doing outside of sport too? What's important, and how they're doing that way. So creating an environment where you sit around as equals to discuss what's going on in each other's, I don't want to say each other's lives, but maybe that's important, but an opportunity to see where we are and then see where we want to go was super important for us. So,
and again, regular conversation. So that the benefit of it being one-on-one is it gets a little deeper, a little more personal. And this can be through Zoom, through the phone. I do this work with athletes all the time and non-athletes. I do it with former students that reach out. And it's an area where I don't think there's enough of. It's not psychology, right? We're not sitting there pulling out the psychology books. I know I showed you some psych tonight. But what it is, it's just a conversation. There's no plan. There's no agenda. It's just like, what's going on with you, right? And it's not like so the coaching conversation would not just be about, it is around kind of the sport, like Ryan said, but then you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And as coaches, I know most of you are just trying to figure out how to get athletes to listen on the water, right? You're working with little kids, but all the things, all those pillars we talked about tonight, you can start working on. Just Google, how do I work on self-awareness with 5-year-olds, right? If you're coaching at 5-year-olds, you can, if a human being can communicate with you, can listen, can speak, can read your body language, you can work on all these things. At the level, remember, starting where they are. So ICCs, I would like to see more of that in your coaching practice. If you're an athlete online here, right, you're training, suggest to your coach, and I know you'll say, oh, my coach, never talks. Maybe that's not your club coach that you need to have the ICC with, right? I do work with athletes that have other club coaches. The club coaches know I work with them, right? And we don't talk about the program necessarily. Actually, we talk about whatever the athlete wants to talk about. There's a cloak of silence there. It's very confidential, but we have our rules. If again, it's like I've worked in guidance for many years. If there's any harm or anything, self-harm, then we got to open up to, if you're under 18, parents have to be involved with that. But the key is these regular conversations, they really do work. There's science behind these, but most of all, there's heart behind these. And if you can start doing this, even with a couple kids, right? Again, remember rule of 2, if you're in like face-to-face, even online rule of, you have to be careful. If you want to do this with people, if you're thinking about starting this, reach out to me and I can help you with it. Okay. All right. A couple things that I use, and these are fun. I dare you to do one of these surveys with your staff, right? I often work with, and mostly with kids at school in the guidance area, but some of the athletes I work with, I look at their strengths and then not their weaknesses, but their saboteurs. What's a saboteur in terms of a behavior? Think about what a saboteur could be. Something that, a behavior that no? What does the word saboteur imply? These are things that we do that we go, damn, I did it again.
Sabotage?
Yeah. They trip us up in our quest for greatness, right? We all have those things. And these are very good little surveys. They're inventories that are free. You do have to put an email in. I dare some of you to go and do them tonight and share it with me, what happened, right? I like to be a character one. And then they'll start advertising. They do advertise how they can help you, but you already have a coach, right? Anyway, there's lots of ways. But again, these are story starters to help with the ICC, right? You could find all kinds of little surveys for your young athletes in your Canoe Kids programs, in your, or just have those conversations, regular conversations, roundtable, like Ryan said, not just on rainy days. Any questions, any sharing, any discussion? I know I'm over time. I think that was about an hour, including for my part. Anyone want to? Has this been helpful?
Yes.
How? Tell me how. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I feel like I kind of know more what I need to focus on, like rather than just the athlete's abilities, but also like what else they can do. Like,
right. And that's why I set it up in pillars, and I will help you, Justin. Reach out. I'll coach you to be a better coach if you want, right? In this realm. Anyone else learn anything?
I was going to add something to the weekly meetings. I know Rob was really great with scheduling meetings all the time, not only as athletes but also as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trialing this website called Inner Logic.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Inner Logic, you were able to see your team health and mood. So everyone would answer different questions, and we would all debrief together as a team. So if something was happening, we'd always work through it. So it wouldn't be somebody constantly feeling frustrated about something. It was a way that it always prompted discussion. So I found that really helpful.
That's really good. I just seeing now, I mean, who is your prof?
Jean Cote is my
Oh
prof.
yeah. Yeah. So at Queen's.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
his sport participation and performance course. So it's like the model that you went through.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. It's everywhere, but I love it. And he's awesome. He's awesome. Yeah. Thank you. That's great. I'm going to look up that one, inner logic, and hopefully all of you, whenever you have a discussion, get a piece of paper, get a pencil. A lot of times I take notes, just write stuff down, right? Mike Scott used to say that, probably still does. All right. So thanks for being here tonight. Again, you can read this. I really, really appreciate you spending time to get better. And I'm here for you. I'm dedicated to serving you in any way I can.
Bill, before we sign off,
Yeah.
well, number one, if there's more questions, this is the opportunity. So raise your, come off mute or put it in the chat.
Yeah.
What I found actually super interesting when we talked about athlete abilities and coaches' expertise, I think someone brought up like the coachability of an athlete.
Yeah, it was there.
And I completely understand that. It's that willingness for athletes to learn and grow and accept feedback. Where I sometimes have a problem with that is we evaluate coachability as if that's the athlete's doing really well or not so well. When I actually think that's an evaluation of the coach, because if you don't think they're very coachable, probably means we as coaches need to shift in how we're delivering that information. So
that's super good.
I think it's super important to keep those communications open, but also be, we talk about this a lot, be adaptable, coach the individual and coach the person, right? And that's probably a big part that I hope we're learning here, is that how we deliver the information, how we gather it, how we share it. We need to look at how do we get that out there, which is probably a general way, but how we serve the individual, and the individual as that person is super, super important. And if it's not working, try and adjust, have conversations, communicate, and see how we can do it differently so that it can kind of work. So I understand with that whole coachable concept, but the evaluation of it, I think it should be more internal rather than external of how we can go forward with that.
Absolutely, Ryan. And again, I think, we don't tackle this enough. There's 100 different ways I could have gone with this. One of them was this book that is on the screen. Can everybody see that? I'm just about done this book now. It is a great book for coaches. So, this is where I learned about that idea where the athletes actually determine when they stop and how hard they go. But there's a ton of good stuff in here, right? And Steve Magnus is an amazing running coach. He's got great YouTube videos if you hate reading. But again, I would buy this for every athlete I coach. And we'd have a book club. There's another one, right? There's ideas in terms of just treating your athletes, touching on the areas that coaches don't normally touch on, right? Let's go into the affective part of the brain. Let's go into the feelings. Let's go into stuff. No more do we do this type of coaching where it's just like, do the workout, shut up, and get off the water and go home, right? I mean, that's still going on some places, but not very many, especially after COVID, because we realize now we have choices, all of us. And if you want to work as a coach, and if you want to be successful and feel successful, you got to do more than just holding the watch. Okay. So
maybe last chance, Bill, for any
questions?
Speak now or not forever hold your peace, because you can always You can always ask myself or approach Bill when you know, either online when we see on competitions, but last opportunity.
I have one for you about the coaching course, Ryan.
There we
Justin,
go.
maybe we'll pause that for a second, Justin, and
Yeah. Okay.
I'll stay on the line for that 100%. I can answer those questions, but specifically on what we're talking about here, I'll do that first.
So I've got everyone's address. I'm going to mail you the exam. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful I'm alive.
Yeah.
COVID was not fun.
Okay,
And
folks,
thank you,
before we go, and we're going to sign off in 30 seconds, I really want to say thank you to Bill. Bill, you're a friend, you're a peer, you're a mentor. I feel like you somehow pulled 30 some odd years of experience and put it together in an hour presentation, which is incredible. I learn every time I hear you and we talk. This was really good, and I hope people, you know, at least start to question what we're doing. Are we providing the appropriate pathway? Are we servicing the participants and the athletes the way they deserve? So at least spark those conversations. But thank you, Bill. This is huge, and this is where sport needs to be, and probably needed to be many years before. But thank you.
Well,
This was really
and
good.
thank you, Ryan, for initiating and having me do this. And all of you that are online right now, this is the first time we've done something like this. Like Emma's lucky she's sitting in, you know, sports psych class. But again, it goes beyond psychology. If you remember one thing I said tonight is everything you need to be successful and happy and everything you want is inside you, right? It's just the right kind of questions, you know. So put yourself in a place where people ask you questions. Let's get back to feed forward, where you're feeding people forward for your feelings and being open about how you feel about things. And mostly ask yourself the questions, right? The query theory. Ask yourself questions and write down stuff. You will be better and happier. Everything you need is already inside you. You don't need to search. And if you have questions or you want me to ask you questions, send me an email.
Amazing. Thank you, Bill.
Good night, folks.
I'm gonna stop recording. You can check off. Thank you for joining us. If you still have some questions, whether it's for Bill or myself in terms of the education side, we'll both stay on for 10 minutes or so. But thank you so much. Again, I understand you're in the trenches right now with what your job, your coaching, and the summer programming. So good luck. Keep doing what you do, and thank you for what you do.
See you all at the regattas.